Hey everyone, welcome back to our brand new redesigned cooking show called Virtual Bites. We've had a little bit of a hiatus since the summer, and we've been able to secure some more funding to get our show back up and running. Special shout out to my virtual program participants, say that 3 times fast, in our Virtual Bites virtual program that is going to be following along with us in a classroom setting and then jumping in on the video after. But as always, this video is for anybody who wants to learn a little bit more about cooking in the kitchen. So, some things you're going to notice is our videos now are much longer. We're going into a lot more detail now, and we're going to follow the whole cooking process. We do have our excellent cameraman behind the scenes, Dave. There's his hand. So if you hear, he might pop in with some knowledge that he has. He's going to be my taste tester for a lot of things. So we're gonna get started with our recipe for today. We are making carrot cake cupcakes. And so what we're going to be doing is going through our list of ingredients first. So Dave, come on down over here. So to start, we've got our flour, sugar, cinnamon, baking soda, salt, carrots, oil, and eggs. This is everything we need to make our muffins. Now you're going to notice, if you followed along with us in the summertime, we always had everything pre-measured out. Now, we're going to be going through how we measure out our ingredients and what tools we should be using for that. And then all the way down here at the other end of the table, we're going to be making fantastic cream cheese icing. So we've got some cream cheese, butter, and our powdered sugar. Okay, let's get started. First, we need to grab our recipe and our bowl, and we're going to put all of the dry ingredients together. So, make a little bit of space for myself. For measuring out our dry ingredients, we're going to use our measuring cups and our measuring spoons. When we get to our oil, we're going to use a liquid measuring cup. And the reason we have a different type of measuring cup for liquids is this is going to give us a more accurate reading. If I tried to fill this cup up all the way to the top with my water, or oil, or whatever it might be, I'm not going to get an accurate measure because I might, tip it or anything like this. This way, this cup, I can put it down and I can measure right to the line and have a very accurate number. So, we're going to use that for our oil a little later. So we're going to go ahead and grab our flour over here. And the recipe calls for 1 cup of flour. So I'm going to go ahead and stick my cup in there. Now, when you're baking, you want to have very exact measurements. So what you can do is you want to make sure that it's flat. You can take the back of your spatula, or you can even use a tablespoon. You can use even the end of a spoon. And you want to just start at the one end and go really slowly across. Look at all the excess that I'm getting off of my measuring cup there. And believe it or not, that little bit of excess would affect the quality of our cupcakes. So we need 1 cup of flour. That's going to go right in our bowl, just like that. We'll put that back to the side. And then next we are going to use 3/4 of a cup of sugar. And because I don't have a 3/4 cup measure, I'm going to use a 1/2 cup and a 1/4 cup together. That's going to give us 3/4. I don't want to use the 1/4 cup because I won't have an exact measure on where 3/4 of a cup is. So we'll go in there, do the same thing we did with our sugar. And again, we want to make sure that we get a level scoop. And if you got some of those, our sugar might have gotten a little bit of moisture in there and those hard balls. We don't want that in there. I can break those up a little bit later. So use our spoon again and get nice level. So there's 1/4. If I really wanted to, I could also put 3 of these in. That's our math skills. Why we need to know our fractions. Different ways if we don't have the tool we need. I'm running a little low on sugar, so I'm just pounding down those crystals in there. There we go. So see here that my cup isn't completely full. Well, I'm going to grab my smaller one. I'm going to add to it because I'm having a bit of a hard time getting all the sugar out that I need. So, and it's okay if we spill over the bag a little bit because we're going to clean it up afterwards. There we go. Nice and accurate measurements. Now, one thing, I was so excited to get started with our cooking. I completely forgot we need to preheat our ovens to 350 degrees. So we're gonna go on over to our oven over here. Our oven is electric. Readings here, you might have dials on yours. So we're gonna preheat our oven to 350 degrees. Okay, and that will just start going from there, and it'll beep and let me know when it's ready to go. Okay, now, since I touched the oven, I'm gonna go quickly wash my hands and come back, and we're gonna get right back into filming the rest of this video. Okay, so I'm back, washed up my hands, and as you'll notice, I also cleaned up my workspace a little bit. Got a bit messy with the sugar there, and we always wanna make sure we have a clean workspace when we're cooking. So, we are gonna continue on with the rest of our dry ingredients. We're gonna move on to our cinnamon. Here we need 1 teaspoon. So on your little tiny measures, that is the 1 TSP. So you'll notice I've got a TSP and a DBS. This is a teaspoon and a tablespoon. Always double check your measurements, because if we put a tablespoon of cinnamon in, woo, we'd have some spicy cupcakes, that's for sure. And again, same thing when we're measuring with this, that we want to have a level measure. I'm going to be a little bit more careful this time and make sure it goes right back in the container. So we've got 1 teaspoon of baking soda. Next, we are going to use our baking soda. This is what's going to give some height to our cupcakes so they're nice and fluffy. Now, because I put this into the cinnamon, I don't want to cross-contaminate it into the baking soda. So I am going to use my ½ teaspoon measure and put 2 of those in. So we've got a little bit of a lump in there. Just break that up. Because again, we want to make sure we don't have too much baking soda. 1 and 2. Once when I was a kid, I was making a chocolate cake, and I grabbed a tablespoon instead of a teaspoon to measure out my baking soda. And I made my cake, and it turned out fine. It was poofy and everything. But when we ate it, it tasted like eating chocolate toothpaste. And now I know why chocolate isn't a flavor for toothpaste, because it was not tasty at all. So I definitely learned that one with making sure you have your proper measurements with your recipe. We're gonna move on to salt, just for a little bit of extra flavor. It'll bring out that cinnamon flavor for us. So a ½ teaspoon of salt. Now that's all of our dry ingredients. We're gonna get our whisk, or you can use a spoon, you can use a spatula, anything that you have at home, even a regular fork will work. And we're gonna mix all of this together. We wanna make sure that everything is well incorporated, because if we have little bits where the cinnamon didn't get to other parts of the flour, then it won't be as flavorful. So you wanna make sure that's all mixed up. The baking soda gets blended in, because again, we wanna have even rising of our cupcakes.
And not toothpaste.
And not toothpastey. That's right, Dave. And finally, any lumps that were in our sugar or our flour, we're just gonna make sure that there's nothing in there. Okay, so take a few minutes with that. And again, don't be too crazy with your stirring, because it's gonna fly out of the bowl. Not only will you make a mess, but you'll change up all of your ingredient ratios. So just keep it in that bowl there. Okay, we're gonna put that off to the side, and we're gonna start working on our wet ingredients. So we are going to do, it says 1½ cups of peeled grated carrot. So we're using a little bit of an assumption on how much carrot we need. We're gonna think we need at least 2 carrots. If we need a little bit more, we can go to the fridge and grab another one. And if it's too much, well, we got an extra snack for later while we're waiting on the muffins to cook. So first, you're gonna wanna peel your carrots. I've already washed them. Now we're gonna peel them off. And I got a couple peelers here, because sometimes the ones we have don't always work nice. You wanna hold firmly the top of the carrot and peel away from you. And you don't need to go super fast. This isn't a race. Okay, and you're gonna go until all of that kind of leftover, or not leftover, all of the outside of the carrot is gone. And that's just to make sure that we've got nice, fresh carrot showing. You don't have to peel your carrots when, you know, they come right out of the garden. I don't know if you've ever done that, sprayed them off with a garden hose and just eat them fresh. But when they've gone to the store and they've been sitting in a bag, you want to take off that first layer of skin. Okay, and again, always make sure we're washing. So the second one done up here, and again, I'm just using one motion. You don't want to go back and forth with it. You'll just make more of a shredded mess. So just nice long strokes, and I'm going to turn it around because this one is a bit longer, and we'll get this side. And you want a firm press. You don't want to go in too deep and take out a chunk of carrot, and you don't want, if you don't put pressure, you're not going to do anything. And if you go in too deep, you're going to actually carve out a chunk of carrot. So we've got all of our skin off. Okay. I'm going to put this aside to put into the garbage later. And for those of you following at home, you can go ahead and put that in the garbage now and come back to the camera or to the video.
Or you can put it in a compost.
That's an excellent yes, Dave. You can definitely put it in compost. I forgot that I have to cut off the ends of the carrot just because they aren't super nice at the end. We don't want to do that. Dave, do you compost at home?
I do not, but if I had more space in my yard, I probably would. How about yourself, Laura?
I used to compost in my old house, and in my house right now, we actually just built gardens, so I plan on composting next summer. It's it's good for the environment, helps us not have as much garbage coming out of our houses, and it's good to, put that in, and it breaks down with anything that's a, vegetable or a fruit. You can put eggshells, you can put your tea bags, and it helps to break back down and goes back and puts so much nutrients into the soil. And the one thing with composting is we don't want to ever put meat or any packaged products in there. The meat will actually, it doesn't break
Rots
down.
it.
Thank you, Dave. That's the word. Okay, so we're going to grate our carrot. So I've got my grater here. There's a couple of different sides to the grater. Some will give us kind of slices. Some will give us more of like a fine microblade if we wanted ginger or garlic. We're going to use the more common side of the grater. Cheese, carrots, apples, onions, anything. This is the side we're going to use. So I've got that in my bowl. You can use a bowl, you can use your cutting board or a plate, and we're going to put the carrot on an angle, have a firm grip on our grater, and I'm just going to go slow, again, not a race. I'm going to get a firm grip on that carrot, and I'm just going to go up and down with it, okay? If the piece of carrot in your hand is too big, cut it in half, make it a bit smaller for you to handle. Okay, you should always feel comfortable with what you're doing in the kitchen. And if something, you're holding a knife or, you're holding a pot handle and it doesn't feel comfortable, make sure you fix it so that it is, because safety is our #1 priority after making good tasting food. Okay, so I'm going to take a couple minutes here to grate this carrot up. You're going to do that at home, and we will see you right back here in about 2 minutes. Okay, so we've got almost all of our carrot grated, and you can see now that my piece is very small. I'm just got my hand and just slowly going up and down with it. Okay, and you can rotate it, use as much of that carrot as possible, but don't put this chunk in after because no one wants to bite down into a gigantic piece of carrot inside their cupcake. Okay, so put that to the side, and we'll see how we're doing. Now, it says heaping in your recipe, and when it says heaping, you do want to follow that. And these are carrot muffins, so we want to make sure that we've got a good amount of carrot in there. And then take your time to go through and get all the excess carrot off of your grater. Always come up with your hand, following that way. If you go down, that's when you increase your chance of getting cut. So we're going to go up and then pull that off. And then inside, there's a bunch that gets caught in there. So put inside. And it's really important when you do start washing your dishes afterwards that you also go up the grater and you go inside the grater. Lots of times people forget to go inside the grater to get the last of their cheese, or in this case carrot. So that was our two full carrots. I have little pieces left. I'm going to save those for snack later. So we've got our 2 heaping spoons, 2 heaping measurements of carrot. So I'm going to go ahead and dump those in our bowl. All of that nice carrot right there. You can grate your carrot ahead of time. Those of you in the Virtual Bites live Zoom program, we did our carrot skills Wednesday night, and those carrots will last in the fridge in a sealed bag for about a day or 2. You'll notice that there might be some extra liquid. Just drain that off. If you do your carrots too early though, they may turn brown, start wilting, and they won't be any good. So we've got our fresh carrot. Then we're going to do 2/3 of a cup of oil. So clean off this carrot bits here. clean off my hand a little bit. There we go. Add that to my pile of garbage over here, but at home, make sure you put it in the garbage. Okay, now we're gonna do our oil. So again, you can use any kind of oil you'd like. If you want to use vegetable oil, canola, olive oil will give you a stronger, different flavor, but it's fine to use as well. So we're using 100% pure canola oil. I'm gonna find on my measuring cup my 2/3 of a cup measure. So I'm gonna look at that. I'm gonna pour slowly. Get an adult to help you if your oil container is heavy. They're not always as big as my container. Now, really important, I'm gonna measure to where I think it is. And then I'm gonna crouch right down. You guys. And I'm gonna see from this level if I have enough oil in. Because if I'm standing from above, I might not get all of the ingredients I need. So I can see here that I'm actually a little short on my oil. So I'm gonna slowly pour in. There we go, right at the line. And you're gonna do that when you do water, any of your liquids. Always make sure that you're on a level surface and you get down so you can see it. Because if I'm up here.
Can you just turn it for us?
Yeah, sure, Dave. There you go. Right on that line.
3/4 of a cup.
Nope, that's 2/3 of a cup. See, at the angle that Dave is at, the camera's actually sitting up here, but he's got to bring that camera right down level. Trust me, Dave, I got 2/3 of a cup in there.
All right.
Okay, so in goes our oil straight into our carrots. Okay, got the lid on that. You can put that to the side. And then we have 2 eggs that go in. And I always crack my eggs in a separate container. For this purpose, we've already got our pre-dirtied container, so we're gonna use this. What we're gonna do is we are going to look for any shells. We're also gonna see that the egg is good. Now, as soon as I turned this egg over, look what I saw in my egg. That egg already has a crack in it. So it might have gotten damaged from the store here, or it might have been damaged already when it was at the store. So we're not gonna use this. It's yucky. We can't trust that it's still a good egg. So I'm gonna come back here, grab another one, and just double check, no cracks. When you're at the store buying eggs, always a good idea, just pop it open, take a quick look. You can see cracking, or if the container looks like it's wet on the cardboard, put those back and get a different one. So we're gonna crack straight down on the counter, open that up. And I'm looking for any egg shells. I'm also making sure the yolk is a nice circle. If I open it and the yolk spreads out right away and doesn't hold that nice circle shape, oh, I got a shell in there, then that means that the egg isn't good. Now, a handy little trick, if you get a shell in, you can actually use the shell to get the other piece of shell off, and it'll stick right there. Instead of using your finger and scooping in, you can just use the shell. So we are going to use our whisk. We're just gonna break those up just a little bit. We're gonna dump that in. And that's all we need for our liquid measure. We don't need too much because there is quite a bit of moisture in the carrots. So I'm gonna use my wooden spoon and I'm gonna mix this up. I'm gonna try to make sure that this gets incorporated itself first before we add the dry ingredients to it. Okay, there we go. Now we are going to slowly add in our flour into our wet ingredients. So we're gonna go a little bit at a time. We wanna mix until our mixture is just moist. We don't wanna over mix it. The more we play with it, the denser our cupcakes are gonna be, and they won't be nice and light and fluffy like a cake. And the other thing, when you're baking, that baking soda is gonna start to react as soon as it gets wet. So I've got the rest of my flour in there. So with that baking soda, you don't want to spend too long mixing because again, the chemical reaction that's going to happen to make them light and fluffy, it won't happen. You'll have dense and not nice high-rise cupcakes. So we're going to give this about, 5 or 6 good stirs. There we go, about that. Just until all of the flour is blended. Get the side. Okay, we're more like 12 stirs right now at this point. But there's no more flour that I can see. So that took about a minute to mix up, okay? We want to work fairly quickly, so I've got my muffin tins here ready to go. If you are using non-stick, you don't necessarily need a muffin liner. I like to use them just because it is nicer when they're done for packaging. If you don't have muffin liners and you just want to use your trays, just make sure you do put a little bit of a spray on them, especially if they're older and they're non-stick. You don't want your cupcake cooking into the mixture. So we are going to fill up our cupcake liners 3/4 of the way full. I like to use another measuring scoop and just put a little bit in. And less is always best in this case. I can go through afterwards and I can always top up my muffin liners if I need to, or if I put too much like that one, I can always take a bit out once it's in. So I want to put the liner in my hand first and then put the cupcake mixture into the pan. If I put it all in the pan and then I have to try to hold my pan up, then it's going to be more of a mess. Might miss the pan a little bit. This way I have more control over. So I'm using a 1/4 cup measure and I'm filling it about half full. Okay. And I'm not getting anything that's going to cook on the sides. So I'm going to fill those up. This recipe should give you 12 cupcakes. If you find you have one extra, then maybe you didn't put enough into all of your pans. And if you are short one cupcake, then maybe you overfilled your cupcakes a bit. So you can make those adjustments as you need to. Just remember to try to act quickly because we do have that chemical reaction happening already with our baking soda. They smell good. I can smell the cinnamon in them. And making sure, since it's all well incorporated, we've got lots of carrot going to be in each one of these. Okay, there we go. And like I said, we preheated that oven. We had to pause and go back and turn it on. So our oven is about ready to go in. So most new ovens will beep at you once the oven is come to temperature, or they might have a light that turns on. So just make sure you know what setting works best for your oven. So it looks like I may have overfilled my cupcakes a little bit because I've got some mixture left, or not enough mixture left for one. Let's see how good my skills were here. Now I'm going to take my spatula and I can really get into the bowl and get all the last of the batter out. And actually, we might be pretty close to having them filled. A couple of them might have been overfilled a little bit, especially that one over here. So I'm going to take my spatula, I'm just going to quickly pull just a little bit of that out and put it in that one that's a little bit shy. There we go. So we are going to go over to the oven. We're going to put these in for 13 minutes. We are looking for the tops to be golden. They're going to puff up a bit, and then we're going to measure them with a toothpick to make sure the inside is cooked. So come on over here, Dave. I'm going to go over to our oven. Use this one. I'm going to slide those in. And at home, always make sure you are using your oven mitts. I should have those on. But because my pan is cool right now, I can still hold it. But for more safety, put that on first and then slide those in. Okay, we're going to close that up. We're going to put on our timer for 13 minutes. We're going to clean up our workstation and then we're going to get started making our cream cheese icing. So we'll see you back after I've cleaned up my station. Okay, so our timer is going off now on our cupcakes. They have been in there for 15 minutes. You're going to notice I have the light turned on. And we didn't talk about this at the first. When you put your stuff in, you don't want to be opening the oven to look and see how it's doing. Because every time you open the oven, you're letting all of the nice hot air out. So I've got the light turned on so I can take a look. So I'm going to look. We added 2 more minutes at first, so they've been in for 15 because they didn't look quite ready. They look a little bit ready now. So what we're going to do is we're going to get our toothpicks. I'm going to open this up and I'm going to take my toothpick and put it into the center of the cupcake. I'm going to pull it out, and if I still have dough on the cupcake or on the toothpick, then I know I'm going to put them in for about another minute or 2. If they come out clean and nothing on them, then we're good to go and we'll start cooling them. Got our oven mitts on. They do look nice and moist, but they also Well, nothing came out on that one. So we grab another toothpick. I'm gonna look for the highest cupcakes. Yeah, so Dave, I don't know if you can get a close up there, but you can see some of the flour mixture still on there. And I can tell because of the way that they look, they're not quite firm enough for what I'm looking for. So we're gonna go ahead and put that timer on for 2 more minutes. While those are in there, we're gonna come over and we're gonna start getting our icing together. We were cleaning up all of our workspace while they were cooking, so you can do that as well. Clean your cook space, and then once you take your cupcakes out, they do need to cool before you can put the icing on. So no rush with taking them out and making sure the icing's ready. They're gonna need about 10 minutes to cool. That gives us time to make these. What you're gonna need for the icing, other than the ingredients we measured before, are measuring cups, another bowl, and a plastic bag. I'm gonna talk about why we're gonna use that plastic bag in a little bit. So first we're gonna use a 1/2 cup or 4 ounces of cream cheese. Okay, so we buy our cream cheese in big containers. If you are buying yours at home, a block of cream cheese, not a container, but a block, that's 8 ounces, that's a cup. So just cut that block in half. So for here, I am gonna do a little bit of an eyeball just to see. I've got this has been sitting out at room temperature while we've been cooking. To soften it, you're gonna see it says cream cheese at room temperature on your recipe. And again, that is so that it's easier for us to work with. It gets a little softer. If you take it out of the fridge and you need it right away and it calls for it to be soft, just pop it in the microwave. Your microwave should have a setting on there that says soften. If not, go at about 15 to 20 second increments on a 70% heat temperature. If you don't know what that is, make sure to ask an adult because you don't want to melt or cook your cream cheese. So with this one, icing, it's a little bit more forgiving than baking, so I've got approximately the 1/2 cup in there. So I'm going to scoop that out and put that right into our bowl that we're going to be mixing. I'm using a metal spoon this time because I know that that's going to be harder to work with, and so the spoon isn't going to give me, it's going to be easier to work with. If I have my spatula, every time I hit that cream cheese, spatula is going to bend, it's not going to help me out very much. Next, we've got our tablespoons of butter. I'm gonna go double check those real quick. Just that couple extra minutes, they've come to a little bit more of a golden color. And nothing is sticking to those toothpicks. So again, I'm looking for the biggest cupcakes, right, trying to get in the middle, because the middle is the thickest part. That's gonna take the longest to cook. If I come out here on the edge, well, that's cooked already. But they came out clean, so we're gonna put these up top here so they can start to cool. You wanna leave them in the tins for at least 2 to 5 minutes because they're gonna be really hot to get out and you don't wanna burn your fingers. And then they'll need an additional 5 to 10 minutes to cool, either on a cooling rack or just on a different tray off of the oven so they're not gonna stay too hot. There is some residual heat that will finish cooking. And don't forget to turn your oven off when you're done. So clear that right off. Those will be fine chilling out there while we come back to our icing. So we've got our cream cheese in there. Next, we're gonna use butter or margarine. And again, softened to room temperature. We're gonna use 4 tablespoons of this. So again, I'm just gonna scoop, and we can be approximate with our icing, because again, it's a bit more forgiving. We're not baking with it. We're just making some really yummy tasting icing. So we got 2, 3, and 4. And then there we go. We've got all of the butter that we need in there. Okay, I'm going to put the excess off. Don't leave it on the side like that because then when the next person goes, they might stick their thumb in it. So get that nice and closed up again. That'll go back into the fridge. And before we move on to adding in the icing sugar, I'm gonna soften this a little bit and blend it up. It'll just make it easier for us to work with. So good grip on the bowl. This is gonna be a little bit challenging because that cream cheese, it's pretty stiff. So I'm gonna mix that all up. My bowl just has a little bit of a hook on it, so it's making some noise there, but that's okay. So it doesn't have to be perfectly blended now. I'm just trying to soften it up to make it easier to work with once we add in that sugar, because that powdered sugar is very light and it will fly up everywhere. So I'm going to spread it out, and that way when I dump the icing sugar on top, it'll cover, it'll start to stick, and won't fly up as much. Now, we also need a teaspoon of vanilla, so I'm going to put that in next. Grab my teaspoon measure, and since my teaspoon is still in the dishwasher, we're using a half teaspoon.
Can I see that again? Half TSP.
Okay, and again, I don't want to measure over my bowl, because if I spill, it's going to be way too much vanilla, so I'm going to come over here to this little one, and we're going to put a little bit in. Now, I know I mentioned that for our liquid measure, we should be using our liquid measure, but you will not get a teaspoon measure out of a liquid measuring cup. That's more for your bigger measurements. Measuring spoons for vanilla is fine, because it's such a small amount that we're adding in, just for that extra flavor. Okay. And then finally, we're gonna add in our icing sugar. So, we always use what we have open first. So we're gonna finish off this open bag here of icing sugar. So we have about 3/4 of a cup, so I'm not going to dump that in yet. This is going to go in the garbage. We're going to open up our other bag of icing sugar. And you want to get all of the icing out of the top corner from where you're cutting, that way it won't go all over the table. Get an adult to help you with this part. I'm gonna just open up the bag. Now we're gonna finish adding in. So there's the 1 cup of icing sugar. Ooh, got a little bit of a crease in there. There we go, much better. And again, because we're not baking with this, it's just icing. We don't have to be as exact as we were with our flour measurement earlier. Now, if you're not a fan of cream cheese, whoop, made a little mess there. If you're not a fan of cream cheese, you don't have to add it. You can just make regular buttercream icing with your icing sugar, butter, and vanilla. If you want to get fancy, you can add a little bit of food coloring into it and tint it. I like white, seems more classic. A carrot cupcake with white icing reminds me of carrot cake. So I'm not going to add any coloring to mine, but you can add a couple drops of food coloring. Now, we're going to carefully incorporate this. Now, it looks as though we have way too much icing sugar for our liquid. But the really cool thing with the icing sugar is it will get absorbed into the butter and cream cheese with the moisture that's in there, because we don't want runny icing. We don't want it to fall off of our cupcakes. So we want it to be a bit more stiff. So I'm just going to work this, and you'll notice that it's going to slowly start to get incorporated. I've got my spatula here to clean off my spoon. And I'm going nice and slow. I've got a firm grip on the bowl, because again, this is very light. I don't want the icing sugar to fall out. And the more I mix this, the more everything is getting incorporated. The cream cheese, the icing, or sorry, the powdered sugar, the butter, that vanilla. And if you find that it is too stiff, you can add a little bit more butter to it. If you find that it's too loose, you can add more icing sugar to it. Whatever you would prefer for consistency. So you can see in a matter of a couple of minutes, that icing sugar has really absorbed into the butter and cream cheese, and all of a sudden, it almost looks like we've got a ball of dough. So I'm going to just keep working that a little bit more. The more I play with it, the softer it gets, and it's easier to work with. And it's going to be a lot easier to spread on our cupcakes. There we go. Now at this point, you might want to do a bit of a taste test. Totally fine. Just make sure if you're tasting, you put a spoon in that you're not going to be putting back in, because if we're sharing this with others, I don't want something my mouth has touched touching in there. So I'm gonna grab a spoon or out of our container, and I'm just gonna grab a little tiny bit, just on the back of the spoon, just like that, just to give a little taste. Oh, Dave wants to taste it. Look at that. Dave's gonna go in there, steal from me.
So very, very good.
Can you taste the cream cheese in there?
Taste cream cheese and the vanilla.
Excellent.
Very nice and smooth.
So now I have to wait till they're iced to try this. But as long as you've got a reliable taste tester in there, that's fine too. Okay, so that looks blended. Actually, I can start to really smell the cream cheese in there. Okay, now I'm gonna take my spatula, make sure I've got everything off the spoon. Now you're probably wondering why I have a plastic bag. This is gonna help us ice our cupcakes. So we're gonna fill this bag up, and then we're actually gonna cut the corner off, and this is gonna be what's called a piping bag. You can go to the store and you can buy special bags for icing cupcakes. They cost a little bit more money. So you can use a regular old Ziploc bag that you've got, as long as it's clean and never been used before. That can be used as a piping bag when you're making your pastries. If it's easier, some people like to put it in a cup or in a bowl so that it doesn't flop all over the place. I'm just gonna kind of put that corner in my hand, and I'm gonna use my spatula, and I'm gonna scoop up my icing, and I'm gonna put it right in the bag and kind of use my other hand. Woo! Right off. I'm gonna use my other hand just to kind of pull that icing off. Now we are working with a stiff icing. Cream cheese is stiffer, so it's stickier. Put it right in the bag there. There we go. See if I can do that all in one big lump there. Perfect. And I'm kind of trying to get it down into that one corner. And now you might be thinking at home I have a damaged spatula. I don't. A lot of spatulas are like that because that's easier for cleaning afterwards. I can get in there, I can pull this off because all the little icing that gathers in the nooks and crannies, well, we don't want it to get stuck in there because it's going to go moldy. So I can actually pull this right off when I'm cleaning and wash inside all around for my spatula. Okay, I'm going to wipe off my hands. I'm going to open that bag back up again. I'm going to seal it, try to get as much air out of it as I can. Right like that. Like so. And I'm going to push it all to that bottom corner where I'm going to be icing from. And again, that's why we wanted to try to aim it to go down there, because we don't want to waste our icing up here. So I'm going to try to push it down. That's okay, I've got a little air bubble there, because that will get released once I have cut open the tip. Now again, get an adult to help you with this. I don't want to cut all the way up here, because then I'm going to get a big pull full of frosting. So I'm going to make a smaller cut, safety scissors, about there. And again, if you go smaller, you can always cut a little bit bigger. Less is always better because you can add. If you start too big, you can't take away sometimes, most times. So there we go. And I'm not going to push any more because I don't want it to start coming out and I don't want to lose it. If you don't want to do the bag technique with piping, it's totally fine. You can just take your spoon and cupcake, just put it on and just make a little dollop on top, spread it out with your spoon. Whatever works best for you and whatever your comfort level is. So we're going to go grab our cupcakes. They should be cooled enough now. If they're still too hot to hold, they're too hot for icing, it'll melt right off. So we're going to check on our cupcakes, make sure that they are cooled enough, and then we'll do the last little bit of our video. Okay, so we've got our cooled muffins, cupcakes. They were a little bit warm after we finished filming the last video, so we popped these in the fridge for about 5 minutes just to speed up that process. So we've got our bag of icing and our cupcakes. We're going to take in between our thumb and our forefinger, whatever hand that you feel most comfortable with, we're going to put the bag in there pretty close, and we're just going to, see I just slightly squeeze a little bit and that icing starts to move. So I don't need a heck of a lot of pressure on those. And I do not want a little bit of cupcake with my icing, I want a little bit of icing with my cupcake. So this should last you for all 12 cupcakes. So I'm just going to apply a little bit of pressure. And again, if I find that my hole is too big or too small, then I can always go back, or if my hole is too small, I should say, go back and finish up. I'm not a professional decorator, so I mean they don't have to look, you know, super fancy, because as long as the taste is there. But try to take a little bit more care with this one. That looks a little bit better. There we go. So that means you can see already I've got tons of icing to work with. So those ones I can put a little bit more icing on these cupcakes here. There we go. And as you, as you use up your icing, just move your hand down the bag a little bit more. So again, good grip. And just going around, right like that. And there we go. So that is how we make carrot cake cupcakes. Too many C's in that for me this morning. And next week, we will be working through homemade pizza from scratch. We're going to be making the dough right from the basics again, with how to use the yeast and flour mixtures, letting it rise. So the videos we'll be making for this production are going to be longer in length. They will be released each week with the recipe attached. So everything will be right there attached on the YouTube page. And we will also be talking a little bit more about nutrition, of why we're making what we make each week. So not only the recipes are going to be a little bit more involved, but one week we might make a vegan meal, or we might make only with dairy products. And we're going to learn about why we're using only certain products, to learn more about how nutrition affects our bodies. So these affect our bodies by being really tasty. There's carrots in them to make them healthy, but everyone loves cupcakes. So since Dave got to try my icing, I'm going to take the first bite out of the cupcake. So let's see how this goes. That's really good cupcake. That's really moist inside. You can really taste the carrot. This one might have a little too much icing on top, but it tastes really, really good. Make sure to take pictures of you cooking in the kitchen, whether it's starting to mix, or it doesn't always have to just be your final project. Show me what it's like with you in the kitchen cooking. Always make sure to have an adult with you if you are using things like the ovens, sharp knives, anything like that. And we'll see you next time. I'm going to keep eating.